Thank you for joining us today on Connect and Collaborate, where we come together each day to introduce you to our network of business and community leaders and discuss the important issues that impact business in Colorado and the region. I am John Ekstrom, your new on-air producer for Vital for Colorado Radio, with our chairman and CEO, Peter Moore. He is our host, and our guest, Kristi Pollard, CEO of the Jefferson County Economic Development Corporation. Peter, thank you for joining us once again.
Well, thanks a lot, John. Vital for Colorado is a coalition. We now have a little over 85,000 people that have joined our coalition, 1,000 businesses, and I think almost every trade association and chamber of commerce in the state, and we try to advocate for a responsible energy policy. And in the spring of 2018, there's a lot to work on, to tell you the truth.
There's certainly no shortage of things going on.
It's a wild world, but we're very, very happy that the real purpose and genesis of Vital for Colorado is that we're trying to preserve and promote economic development. We're trying to preserve and promote the jobs we have, the lifestyle we have. And Kristi Pollard is the chairman of the Jeffco EDC, and you've also done work in the West Slope, and
yes,
you've been working in this field a lot longer than I have. So I think we're going to have a great conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So before we talk about the Jeffco EDC, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, talk about your background. You've had some very, very interesting positions over the years, I think.
You know, I've had a very interesting background. You know, when you go to college and you get your degree, everyone says, well, what do you want to do with that? And I did not get a degree in what I'm doing. So, you know, I thought I wanted to be a teacher at one point. And but
did you get the certification?
I did. I did all the testing, and was ready to go into the classroom. And then my husband decided to go to law school. And so, you know, starting teacher salaries at the time were not that great, quite frankly. And so I had to fall back on a legal background that I had and served as a legal assistant to put my husband through law school. So you do what you have to do. But I have had sort of a circuitous route to
I didn't know that you could do that. Nobody put me through law school. You can actually have somebody else put you through law school?
You know, if you
cool.
could poke my husband a little bit, that would be great.
And by way of disclosure, I actually worked with your husband and that for a long time. What a great guy.
He's a great man, and the investment certainly paid off. But so a little bit about me. I grew up in Western Colorado, so I'm a Western Colorado girl that, you know, brings with it some of those values of, you know, hard work, pro-business, very collaborative in nature. You know, I've had an interesting career. I started as a legal assistant working for an intellectual property a group of attorneys, and it really gave me this interesting background and better understanding about the legal field. But politics, that and policy was something that I loved and I was passionate about, and started volunteering while I was working for the law firm, and really got engaged with a variety of campaigns, better understanding, you know, what it takes to get someone into office. And that volunteerism actually led me to the opportunity to work for the United States Senate for Senator Wayne Allard,
Sure.
who at the time that I went to work for him, he was a junior senator. Senator Ben Nighthorse Campbell was the senior senator. But it was really a neat way to work for somebody who was really pro-business. He was a businessman himself, and every piece of legislation that he carried really had that pro-business mantra, and he never would carry legislation that didn't have support from the local entities, the local government, which really speaks to that collaboration, which is extremely important. I think those are things that I've carried with me throughout my entire career. Worked for the Senate for a number of years and was recruited away by the Southeast Business Partnership, which is the economic development organization for the Denver Tech Center. They're now the Denver
Sure.
South.
Yeah.
And in that capacity, I served as their Vice President of Government Relations and Investor Affairs. And that's really got into the meat of what an economic development organization does. And I also got to continue with the policy, which was so near and dear to my heart. You know, and at the time, there were were some pretty exciting things happening in economic development in the Denver Tech Center. It was during the T-Rex project.
Oh my.
We came out as huge advocates for that, helped with the fundraising effort, and without T-Rex, I know we still have some transportation challenges, but transportation would not be what it is today had we not passed, that bond initiative. So it was a great organization. Again, gave me a really deep insight into, again, what it means to be pro-business and what businesses really need to continue to succeed from a policy standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint. And there are a lot of resources that are available to businesses that I don't believe businesses totally know what's available to them. So loved that job. And my husband, it seems to be a reoccurring theme, he got relocated to Western Colorado when I was at the Southeast Business Partnership. So we had the opportunity to move back to Western Colorado, which was at the time very, very good. We had little kids, smaller town, quality of life, and I went to work for Chevron, which is giving me sort of a rich perspective on the energy industry. At the time, the state was going through some regulatory changes, makeup of the commission, what that looked like, and being an energy producer, we really got intimately involved, and so we could see how policy impacted things there. Sadly, the bottom dropped out of the energy economy shortly after I started.
Natural gas in particular on the West Slope.
Natural gas in particular in Western Colorado and in the Piceance Basin, so I only had the opportunity to work for Chevron for about a year. But
Kristi, I don't think I've ever told you, but I've been practicing law since '81, and in '84 in parachute and rifle there were, because of shale oil, there were workers in those cities that were camping out, and the number 25,000 kind of jumps to my mind. They didn't have housing. And so I worked for a law firm that's very involved in real estate development, and we're building banks, hotels, motels, 7-Elevens, and we were really going after it, and then the bottom fell out, and that was a different time. That was it was kind of a crazy play, but it started when oil was $12 a barrel, and the idea was if it could only get to $40 a barrel, then shale oil will be a multi-billion-dollar opportunity, and it didn't happen then. I don't think it's happened now.
Definitely, but they're still looking for the answers. But
they are, and there's some interesting technology going on. But I know that Union Oil was there, and I think a few other companies, but literally billions of dollars of investment. And what they did is that they just went to the offices and locked the doors, and left the typewriters, and just left. And it was shocking.
Black Sunday.
Black Sunday. There was a day.
Yeah, there was a day. Well, and that, interestingly enough, the organization that I was most recently with, the Grand Junction Economic Partnership, was founded because of Black Sunday.
Sure.
The business community came together and said, we love the energy industry and we're very supportive and they have great jobs, but we can't be solely reliant on a single industry. So diversification of the economy is extremely important. So Grand Junction Economic Partnership was founded, and that's what they went to do, to support energy, but to create new industry. So that's where I most recently was with the Grand Junction Economic Partnership for the last couple of years.
Well, and Kristi, I'm curious, what kinds of industries are diversified on the western slope of Colorado, whereas before it was more reliant on energy? How did they diversify, and what were some of the industries you represented there?
You bet. So one of the fastest growing industries, interestingly enough, is the outdoor industry. And that's for the state of Colorado, not just Western Colorado. But what we found in Western Colorado was that a lot of the displaced workforce that was with the energy industry, with some simple retraining, they were able to move into some of these manufacturing jobs for our outdoor industry. And so it's been an interesting coexistence of energy and outdoor recreation and in the primary job realm. The other thing that is really growing over there is, kind of broadly the manufacturing industry. We have a number of Department of Defense manufacturers, a number of outdoor manufacturers, aviation manufacturers. We have a couple of world-class Fortune 100 companies that manufacture aviation parts, So we really found ways that we could take some of those similar skill sets and put them to use in a variety of industries.
I also think that Colorado Mesa University has grown in stature during those very same years, and I'm aware of it,
yes.
but and I know that you are the CEO of the foundation.
Yes.
So you're very aware of it. And I don't know if that's your college. Was that your college?
That was my college. It was Mesa State College at the time, so it was my alma mater, and it was really a lot of fun to go back and run their foundation. And it has been an extreme time of growth for Colorado Mesa University. They have been one of the fastest growing universities in the state of Colorado for the last, I think, about 10 years.
It's really a drill for Colorado, and people live in the Front Range, think about CU, CSU.
It's a world.
But they don't think about. But if you go to Grand Junction, it's that's the focus, and it's well deserved.
It is. It's a really great campus. 12,000 students.
Yeah.
They offer a variety of undergraduate and graduate and doctorate degrees. So it's it's a great opportunity not only for Colorado students who might want to live in a different part of the state, but they are recruiting heavily from Hawaii. Hawaii has a huge contingent at Colorado Mesa University. A lot of Californians are moving in there. So again, Colorado Mesa University offers kind of that quality of life piece associated with a great degree as well. And Tim Foster, who we all know from his time at the legislature and running the Colorado Commission on Higher Education.
I actually went to law school with my wife, and
Okay.
I think he used to live in my old neighborhood.
Yeah, President Foster has done a phenomenal job, and he's been a real community leader. And I would say, even on the economic development front, President Foster serves on those boards because education is such a critical piece of economic development. So those synergies and being connected at the hip is extremely important.
Well, now you bring all those skills back to Jeffco, and what's going on in Jeffco? I know that.
And before we get there, just on a personal note, I am a Jeffco kid. I grew up in Jefferson County. I grew up in Applewood, actually.
Wonderful.
I'm a graduate of Golden High School, so Jefferson County is near and dear to my heart.
It's a special place. Jefferson County is
didn't know
a
that.
really great place.
There you
And, I think Jefferson County is really, when you look at the state of Colorado, and if you had to take a snapshot of what the state of Colorado is, you can point to Jefferson County. We really are, we've got conservative, we've got liberal, we've got moderate, we are very pro-business, we've got the mountains to the west, the urban core to the right, the eastern side, it's a really, really special place. And interestingly enough, coming to Jeffco kind of brought me back full circle. When I was with the U.S. Senate, I represented Jefferson County for Senator Allard and was able to work on a number of key policy issues related to the business community, in particular the cleanup and closure of Rocky Flats, and taking it from a Department of Energy legacy project to then going to Fish and Wildlife as a wildlife refuge. So interestingly enough,
Has that transition been completed?
That transition has been completed, and there's a great museum up at Rocky Flats that really tells the life story of the role that Rocky Flats played in, the atomic age of the United States and
the Cold War.
The Cold War, absolutely. Jefferson County was at the core of all of those efforts. So,
Or as I remember at the duck and cover time.
yes, exactly. So
I was like 7 years old. I thought it was kind of silly back then. I said, what?
yeah.
Is this
really
going
to
to
be
do?
effective?
Yeah. So, but you ask what's going on in Jefferson County. We are seeing unprecedented job creation, great economic vitality. In 2017 alone, our organization worked with employers to create over 2,100 new primary jobs, which is significant. So, and we're seeing that growth in the aviation industry and the aerospace industry and the outdoor industry. I mean, you name it, we're seeing some great job creation and capital
So
investment.
I don't know what the multiplier factor might be for those 2,100 jobs. If we usually create 2,100 jobs, you're actually creating 4,000, 4,500, perhaps even more, depending upon the industry and the income of the people.
That's exactly right. So, the direct economic impact is profound, but the total economic impact is even bigger. So, we think we have a lot to offer in Jefferson County. We are the quintessential Colorado. We have all of the amenities that you'd want with an urban sort of center, but we have the recreational opportunities that Coloradans love, from hiking to skiing to biking. Jefferson County many years ago instituted an open space program that the voters said, what, this lifestyle is important to us, and so we'd like to preserve some of these outdoor recreation opportunities for our kids and our grandkids. So we have a really robust outdoor program that has maintained some of those kind of mountain-esque sort of landscapes that we as Coloradans love. So, and we're a very business-friendly community. We've got a great group of county commissioners. When it comes to recruiting businesses into the area, they are always at the table saying, how can we help? How can we support you? Our municipalities are also the same thing. So, and I think the thing that I'd love to point out is it's a collaborative county, which I believe Colorado at its core, we are a collaborative state. We don't always agree on things, but we come together and we work on those things that are important.
Well, almost everybody that I speak to in terms of economic development talks about the special Colorado way and the cooperative way.
That's right.
And in terms of our congressional delegation,
yes,
not all of the same party, but on very, very many issues, there's a unified approach.
Absolutely.
And economic development, there's clearly a regional unified approach.
Absolutely.
And it's different. It's not like New York.
It is not. And I've often been asked the question, economic development is not a partisan issue. Economic development is something that we as a state and we as a community support. And so I think Colorado is a great model for the rest of the nation on, how you can be business friendly and you can get economic development done without it becoming this fractured sort of thing like we frequently see in Washington, D.C. and in other states.
Well, and Kristi, one thing that strikes me is Vital for Colorado is focused on energy. And a lot of people in a common narrative want to pit oil and gas against renewables, but Jefferson County in particular has the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, as well as, while no oil and gas development, oil and gas companies do make their homes there. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. Again, Jefferson County is a snapshot of the state. We have the renewable piece, and when we talk about energy, the full portfolio is important. We need all of them. We've got NREL, which is one of our major employers in Jefferson County, and they've been great partners in working through innovation and technology. We also are home to companies like Tallgrass, a major pipeline company that has pipelines all over the nation. We have companies like Tri-Hydro, which is an environmental consulting group that works with the fossil fuel companies and companies that are doing traditional sort of energy development. So, I fully believe that you can coexist. I talk about coexistence a lot. We are huge champions for outdoor jobs and manufacturers and those primary jobs. And we're also huge advocates for energy. And I believe Colorado has really become a model for the nation on, just how you can work together. I think the one thing, the energy industry sometimes gets pitted with being like anti-environment and, trying to do things that we as Coloradans wouldn't support. But that's absolutely false. The energy industry are conservationists at heart. And, we had the opportunity in Mesa County to really bring the two industries together, to work together on some key projects because, the energy industry, they're outdoor enthusiasts. They've chosen Colorado for a very specific reason, just like you and I have chosen. So, it's in our best interest to get those industries together. And I think the thing that's been the most fascinating for me to watch is you oftentimes hear about, the outdoor industry and the energy industry being, on polar opposites of things. But when you actually get them in the room, sitting around the table, there's so much commonality. And I think that's where, as an economic development organization and as an economic development professional, that's our role, is to bring those players to the table, to find those commonalities, those opportunities for collaboration, because we're not so far apart when you start talking about the key issues of importance.
Well, Well, I guess when you're trying to pick a fight, one of the first things you want to do philosophically is to put one side in this box and another side in that box. And that's kind of a static point of view. And quite often when you want to do that, you're looking at facts. They might be 50 years old, 30 years old, 20 years old. And what breaks that up, and I think what feeds the optimism that you clearly have, is really technology and innovation. Absolutely. And there has been so much technology and innovation during the last 5 years. Absolutely. In the energy field. It's almost a situation where maybe 5 years ago there were hypothetically 7 arguments. We don't like oil and gas development because of this reason, that reason, and they just line them up as if they're stone soldiers and they're going to be there forever. Right. But during the last 5 years, those have been knocked down because the companies are competing with each other, and they each have innovation, and they'd like to be the company, and they deeply want to be good citizens in their communities. And Absolutely. Just as you said, they live in the communities. I mean, it's not as if there's one Colorado for oil and gas people and all the rest of the people that care about the environment. It's really just one Colorado. Absolutely. So I'm not really an expert in terms of all of the economic, all the technology changes, but I'm aware of them. Yes. And just the whole idea of, I guess if I could bring one idea to those that you bring inside the room, yes. is to educate about what the changes have been and what the regulations and how responsive regulations have been. If you go through that, you'll quickly find out that the differences are manageable, decreasing, and they're just problems that we can work on together. Absolutely. And if people would work on them together, we would move on them because we have so many other issues that are intractable problems, such as how do you do the funding for the roads? How do you get infrastructure for western Colorado? Absolutely. I mean, those are real problems that almost make the oil and gas issues easy. However, the reality is the oil and gas issues seem to take up all the air in the space. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting world to live in. It's a big circle. Well, and I think that's the thing that we've appreciated most about getting to work with Vital for Colorado, because there really is that education component, and you know that's our role as economic developers. A lot of it is just education about the industry and the innovation and the technologies and the economic impact that they have. You know, data is important. Facts, facts count. And so, you know, we may disagree on, some policy sort of things, but I think it's very important as a policymaker and as a leader in our community that you be well educated on both sides of the issue so that you can make the best decision for your community. Well, Peter, you point this out a lot in the history of this show. What is one of the key principles of the 7 Principle Pledge of Vital for Colorado? Well, I think we've actually hit all 7 of the principles. Right. But we believe in facts, not hyperbole. Science is the way that we put it, is that we prefer science over hyperbole. We avoid the we versus they dichotomy. We appreciate the economic impact. We want people to understand the regulatory regime and how dynamic it is and how responsive it is to problems. And we just wrote a brief to the Colorado Supreme Court where we had the occasion to sort of study and create a record of the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission regulatory changes from 2007 to 2018, and something was happening every year. It was mostly happening under, or many of these changes were under the Hickenlooper and Ritter administrations. Yes. And the environmental forces that often want to create the we versus they were part of the process. They embraced it and said that now that we've created this is great. It's one of the best environmental regulations in the world. And now it's 3 years later. Well, that didn't happen. Right. Best intentions, right? Best intention, because they're new people, and it's not convenient to understand that. So that's my soapbox. But I can see that I found a kindred soul in that, so thank you.
Yes, no, thank you.
Well, so coming up in our next segment, we are going to talk about what an economic development corporation actually does, some of the nuts and bolts. You've articulated to me some of the resources that businesses have. Let's get into those, and we'll also talk about a possible move of a federal agency to the west. But stay with us. This is Vital for Colorado Radio. Your host, Peter Moore, Chairman and CEO of Vital for Colorado, and Kristi Pollard, CEO of the Jefferson County Economic Development Corporation. We'll see you back here in just a minute. Thank you for staying with us here on Vital for Colorado Radio on Connect and Collaborate. I'm John Ekstrom, your on-air producer, sitting here with Peter Moore, our Chairman and CEO of Vital, and Kristi Pollard, CEO of the Jefferson County Economic Development Corporation. And we touched on this in the last segment, Kristi, but it's something I'd like to get into more. You alluded to the resources that businesses have available to them if they're looking to relocate or start in Jefferson County. Why would someone call an economic development corporation? What do you do? How do you help businesses?
You bet. So we like to say that we're a one-stop shop for business. So if a business is wanting to relocate, perhaps from out of state or even within state, they would reach out to an economic development organization, one, because they want to find out about property. We can serve as that liaison. We oftentimes know about different land that is available but not necessarily listed. So we can help through the real estate transactions and kind of be that liaison to some of the brokers and the developers in the area. We also know, every development has its, industry and those types of folks that they're targeting. So we can help direct the companies, from that perspective. But the other things that we can offer, there are a lot of different tax incentives, cash incentives, resources for job training that, as a new business coming into an area, it's helpful. If there are ways that we can offset those capital expenditures that they're going to have during those first couple of years of a move, we want to make sure that we can do that. And the state of Colorado has been very proactive to develop some key tax credits that are based on job creation. There's a metric that the companies have to go through, but we're able to serve again as that liaison to the state of Colorado Office of Economic Development. The other thing that we like to tell businesses about job training, it's something that every industry is consistently having to do, and there are dollars available for job training that we can tap into through the state of Colorado. There are a variety of grants, for advanced industries, energy being one of those industries. There are grants available for startup companies, for second phase, for research and development. So we try to be that conduit. We're connectors. We tend to know where the resources are, and we try to connect those businesses to those. So, anytime we're working, the real estate community is one of our greatest partners. Oftentimes they know about these opportunities. Our local electeds, businesses on the ground.
Local electeds, I was just about to emphasize that because I was looking at your board. I think you have representatives of every municipality.
Yes.
And several Jefferson County commissioners. And it's so important to have those kind of connections, because if you know the community development officer, if you get to know him, you get a sense as what the city or the county is seeking, it forms, and you have a much better application, much better chance.
Absolutely.
I have actually been a former city attorney. I've been in that role, and then I was on the other side representing developers coming to the city, and it was very helpful to realize that the way you ought to approach any elected official is let's try to figure out for a way to make us both successful, because there is that pathway.
Well, and understanding both sides, Peter, is valuable in any profession where you can come at it from both angles. It deepens your empathy, and it helps you finesse the approach immensely.
Absolutely. And, in Jefferson County, we're blessed because we do have great support from our local electeds, not only the county commissioners, but our city councils. They understand economic development, and they understand that, it is a proactive, it's a team sport. It is not something that just happens organically. It is something that you have to have all players on the field. And there are a variety of different things that our local governments offer. Jefferson County is very aggressive. We want good quality jobs in Jefferson County. So we interface with them, and that's precisely why we have them on our board, is so that they know what we're doing. We're able to know what they're doing, and it really becomes a collaborative sort of team.
Well, and I was just also saying that the team metaphor is useful because it's because we're really competing on a regional basis, and I always think of Utah, and I think of the Austin, Texas area.
Yes.
And for years in economic development, without criticizing folks in Colorado, they've been better. And in Texas, for example, a company was coming down on half a day's notice. They would have a congressman, they would have the mayor, they'd have the head of the Chamber of Commerce there, and they have the program going. And I've heard similar very, very positive effects for Salt Lake City.
Yes.
And for the people of the state of Colorado, we need to have this kind of regional cooperative approach. We need to have the chambers work with the counties and the cities, because if we don't compete, the jobs will go elsewhere.
That's right.
So I just want to mention the idea of competition is that you would think that one city would compete with the other, but that doesn't win.
No, it
That's
doesn't.
not a winning approach.
It does not, and I think that brings up a very valuable point about the way that we collaborate with our neighboring counties. The Denver Metro Economic Development Corporation, we are all, we meet on a monthly basis, and we come together because businesses don't see county lines. Businesses see regions, and it's much better for us to work collaboratively to win the business to the state of Colorado than to lose them to a neighboring state who you mentioned too, who are the most aggressive, that are the most aggressive states, as far as incentives. They'll put millions of dollars on the table to encourage a business. And Colorado has really taken the approach, which I think is a sound approach. You don't necessarily want those businesses that are shopping incentives. You want businesses who want to be in your community and want to put their roots in and become part of the community. So we offer incentives to encourage them here, but we're not necessarily, throwing money at them and saying, come and, at any cost, because oftentimes those are the companies that will come, and at the point in time that the incentive ends, they'll leave. They'll continue to shop for an incentive. So Colorado, I think, is doing a really good job.
Absolutely. And Peter, I think this might be a first on this program, but one of my favorite movies of all time is The Warriors from 1979, and it reminds me of the very first scene where Cyrus, the leader of the biggest gang in New York, says, and what are we doing? We're fighting over our turf, our little piece of turf. Why would cities and counties want to get in a turf war like that when it can be ours? It can be all ours, to quote Cyrus.
Absolutely.
So you've now opened the door for not only this show, but shows to come into movie metaphors. And not that I'm competitive, but you're on.
Okay. Gauntlet thrown down, gauntlet answered. And so, but this conversation we're having about regional competition is interesting to me because, Peter, I know that we recently authored a letter, we being Vital for Colorado, encouraging the BLM and Department of Interior to move west. I'd love for you to look.
Well, that's really what I'm thinking is that the Department of Interior has made somewhat clear that they'd like to move an unknown number of people to the west.
Yes.
And the people that I've spoken to, and I keep on asking the same question, but I believe that we're in competition with Utah. And yes. I've heard Grand Junction mentioned very positively, and I'm hoping somebody would have the intel. So that's the setup. And why don't you explain what might happen for which agencies and any intel that you have in terms of whether Colorado does have the inside edge? Because this is going to happen, I believe, as soon as the spring of 2019. And so the measures are being undertaken now.
Yes.
And I've actually met with the Department of Interior folks, and they believe that they can do this without congressional approval, and they said that we are going to do this.
Yes, it's exciting.
So that's your setup, and the letter that we wrote really at your recommendation, because you gave a presentation to our February board meeting and recommended that we do this, and we thought it was a good idea, so we did. So
thank you.
We actually followed up on your recommendation.
Well, we appreciate that. You know, it is a really exciting time, and you know, kudos to Senator Gardner. He was the one that really kind of started this conversation and introduced legislation in 2016.
That's right.
That encouraged the Department of Interior and BLM in particular to move their headquarters west. You know, and in recognition of, you know, BLM land is in the West, and you know, as land managers, it's very difficult to see and know what's happening on those lands without actually being in the field. You know, gone are the days where you had to be a buggy right away from the Capitol. You know, we live in the day and age of technology.
So it's the lands, it's the resources, it's the watersheds.
Absolutely.
And this is just a random memory. I may not have this down. But that was an original idea of the 1910s, 1920s.
Right.
So we're kind of getting back to an idea of about 100 years ago, but the original concept of the design of these agencies is that the administrators should be in the areas that they're administering.
Better late than never, right?
Absolutely.
And I don't know what happened in the last 100 years, but
Well,
something happened.
Politics may have gotten in the way.
Yeah,
but it is an exciting time, you know. So as you know, in my prior role in Mesa County with the Grand Junction Economic Partnership, Mesa County, 74% of their public lands, 74% of their county is public lands. And so we started the conversation with the Department of Interior when I was there, and you know, really encouraging them that Colorado is the ideal place, you know. And in Jefferson County, we've continued that mantra, and what we asked Vital for Colorado to do was to go back and to advocate for Colorado. You know, each region in the state has their very special attributes, and you know, as an economic developer, we are very accustomed to talking about what makes us different from the others across the state. But I think, you know, as we talk about what's good for Colorado, let's get Department of Interior here to the state of Colorado. And if it's Western Colorado, the Grand Junction area, great. We believe that Jefferson County is ideally suited as well. We are home to the Denver Federal Center and have hundreds of federal agencies that we've been a home to. We've got the access to the Denver International Airport. So, you know, if there were a headquarter or a variety of agencies, which we're hearing now, it may be a consolidation of agencies, not just the BLM.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
Yeah, so you know, we believe that we've got kind of the best of all the worlds. But you know, that said, I am a Western Colorado girl, and you know, kudos to my counterparts in Western Colorado. You know, jobs are important, and so they are out advocating. We're out advocating. We have been back to Washington D.C. on a couple of occasions, talking to the Department of Interior. You know, Utah is, you know, continues to constantly be one of our competitors. And they also have a lot of public lands in their backyard. So
I feel like I'm giving a status report in your role as a former teacher, but I'd like to report to you that we did go back and we met with the entire congressional delegation. Rich Coolidge and I went back on behalf of Vital for Colorado, well, along with a number of other people that sat there in the Metro Chamber, and we went with about 5 administration folks, and I think that 6 out of 7 have been on record as affirmatively supporting this. So it's not a party issue; it's a Colorado issue.
It absolutely
is. And it seems that with the Federal Center and some of the lands available in the Jeffco area, that might be a very logical choice. But I know that Grand Junction is fighting also.
They definitely are, you know, so I'm going to continue to do my role as the Jefferson County Economic Development CEO and make the case that Jefferson County is an ideal location, but I would never fault any other region for doing that. And I think the beauty of all of us in Colorado is that at the end of the day, we are advocating for Colorado, and we will celebrate, irregardless of where they choose, and I am bound to determine it will be Colorado, but, you know, we will celebrate who gets those jobs. And you know, last we heard, you know, the Department of Interior is looking at consolidating a number of agencies based on watersheds, which makes a lot of sense. You know, when you talk about the regulatory environment, you know, and having to go through permitting processes, you know, these agencies are oftentimes, they operate in silos, and you have, you know, you're duplicating efforts. So it's refreshing to see Secretary Zinke taking this approach to say, we want to streamline this for the businesses. We want to, get them closer to the land, closer to the resources. So it's an exciting time. We've heard that they are going to be doing this over the course of the next couple of months. And so it's incumbent upon us to continue the Colorado mantra, best place to live, work, and play.
Well, having lived in Washington, D.C. for 4 years, there's also the added benefit of just moving a few of those people out of Washington.
Oh, absolutely. It may be a bit of a cultural shock. We're a little more pragmatic here in Colorado.
It is. I think they'll like it here.
I think they'll like it here too, and I think the beauty, you mentioned the bipartisan support that we have from the delegation. Senator Gardner, Senator Bennett, Congressman Perlmutter in Jefferson County, Congressman Tipton on the 3rd Congressional District. I mean, everybody is just linking arms.
Ken Buck, Doug Lamborn,
absolutely,
Mike Hoffman, Scott Tipton, and Representative Polis.
Yeah.
All of those folks.
We've got great bipartisan support. The governor is supporting as well. So we will do everything we can. We've got a robust package that we've taken back to D.C., and we'll continue to make the case that this is an ideal location. And, the great thing is, again, going back to the local governments, our municipalities and our counties have said, let us be creative. What is it that you as an agency are going to need?
So no breaking scoop?
No, I wish I had some breaking
I
scoop.
wish you
may have more than I do.
It would be nice to break some news on this program. That would certainly be a change of pace.
Well, that would be actually the idea is just a fabulous idea.
It is,
and it's kind of going back to the roots. It kind of changes the mix of government. I would tend to think that if the administrators are here, it makes them more transparent, available, hopefully more responsive.
Absolutely.
And hopefully cheaper.
Well, and the cost of doing business, I mean, that's the easiest case to make.
Certainly.
The cost of doing business and the cost of living in Colorado is significantly less. When we heard, what they were paying per square foot on their lease rates in Washington, D.C., it's crazy. Wow. Even though we've got a really robust real estate market that we regularly talk about, we are nowhere in comparison to what the cost is. So as a taxpayer, I appreciate that they are looking at ways that they can be more efficient with my taxpayer dollars. They can actually be more effective and save money. Wow, that's rocket science.
Well, Kristi, you touched on this a little bit, and I'm interested in some of the nuts and bolts. Describing the cost of living and the cost of real estate, cost per square foot. What else goes into marketing yourself to an agency like Department of Interior with regard to why you should choose Jefferson County or just choose Colorado in general? What goes into that package?
You bet. So it obviously making that business case, we talk about the cost of doing business in Colorado. We also put together real estate. So, I think that is one of the areas where Jefferson County really can stand out, is that we have commercial office space that, Class A, Class B, you name it, whatever they might need. We have space available that we could meet their needs today, but should they decide that they want to do a new build and maybe we need to do some innovative third-party sort of financing, we've got the ability to do that. So we've put together all of those different things from a real estate standpoint. Transportation and access to all of the other regional offices is extremely important. They need to be able to get to their employees, to the lands that they have in other parts of the nation. And, DIA is a huge asset for us on so many different levels. We put together a map that showed all of the direct daily flights and all of the offices that they had, and showed that we could get there within, hours from Denver. The other piece of transportation, a lot of folks in Washington, D.C., they don't own cars. They live in the city. So that mass transit sort of thing. So having the light rail, again, the Federal Center, an ideal location. We have land available right on the light rail. So, from an employee standpoint, recruiting them from Washington, D.C. into an area like Denver would be or Jefferson County would be a very easy transition. You still have the amenities of an urban area, but not necessarily the costs associated from a Washington, D.C. Workforce is another key issue, and we've put together data on the number of federal employees that we currently have in Jefferson County, and also the workforce that's available. You know, you would hope that all of those folks from Washington, D.C. would relocate, but you know, the reality is that they're going to need to find some folks within our talent pipeline. So workforce is another, and then higher education. We put together the access to all of the higher, so continuing that talent pipeline, you know, land management and all, environmental stewardship and environmental engineers and all of those different biologists, you know, all of those different types of employees that they offer. We've got world-class schools here in Jefferson County and the state
I was
of Colorado.
thinking, did she miss anything in the pitch? I don't think you did.
Well, you know,
there's not much left on the table.
I'm a salesperson.
After all of this, I'm sitting going, okay.
Don't you want to move to Jefferson County?
You offered 20 things, no, 25 things, no, 30 things. So that's, you know, one of the things that you mentioned early, and this really gets kind of complicated, but in today's world, there's no money for much of anything. If you go to the U.S. government and you want to do something, in Colorado there's a requirement to have a fiscal note, but now you're going to Congress and they say, well, we don't have any money to do that. And so it is so important. People use phrases of public-private partnership. You use the phrase of unique, thoughtful partnership, but what that really means is that trying to figure out a way to build something.
Right.
And you might be able to get, because I talked about some infrastructure things, and the number kept on coming up 10 or 20%.
Right.
You might be able to get 10 or 20% from the U.S. government, and they view that as seed money, but the other 80% needs to come from some other source.
Right.
How do you put a package like that together? Because that's what you're really talking about, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's complicated.
It is complicated. And, you know, I think that's why Jefferson County, again, is very ideally suited for something like this. We have developers, so private industry, who has, they have built buildings for federal agencies and leased them back. We also have had scenarios where local governments have used their bonding capacity to be able to build facilities and lease them back. So I think we can get extremely creative, because you're right, getting an appropriation with Congress is challenging at best. And so if we're truly going to get an agency to relocate and do it in short order, not, you know, over the next 20 years, then we need to be able to show them. So that's, again, where the Economic Development Organization, we've got those relationships with the developers, the local governments, and we can say, here's a variety of options available to you. Lenders, we've got the banks that we work with on a regular basis. So we told the Secretary's office, let us get creative. We need to better understand exactly what your needs are, but let us be innovative in how we can package that.
So if you have a long-term lease, and let's say hypothetically the cost to the U.S. government is less than the current cost in Washington, so they're saving money right there.
Absolutely.
And it might be saving a lot of money. And then you take that lease, and then that then becomes a financing vehicle for the developer, because the developer can then pledge that lease and say, and from investors, from banks, there might be some public infrastructure associated with that, and then you might be able to have the bonding element. Then you put it all this together, but it all really starts with, do I have a long-term lease for significant square footage, and will it save the government money? It can be done, and that's the process that I'm familiar with.
It absolutely can be done, and that's exactly the types of things that we're trying to do as we make the pitch for that relocation to Jefferson County.
So, Kristi, we've only got about a minute left. Tell us a little bit about what's ahead for Jefferson County EDC, and tell us where we can find you on the web or get in touch with you.
You bet. So, you know, we are our primary mission is job creation and encouraging economic vitality in Jefferson County. So we will continue with the primary role of recruiting businesses and working with existing businesses on retention and expansion. Retention is a huge piece of what we do and extremely critical. You know, workforce and continuing to create that talent pipeline and work working with partners is another key piece. Workforce housing is another piece that we're very focused on. But as we look kind of down the horizon, we think where some of the opportunity that lies ahead is in direct foreign investment. We're seeing a lot of European interest in Colorado, so we're being more aggressive in that regard and putting together some tools that we believe will encourage that direct foreign investment.
And I suppose to find the Jefferson County Economic Development Corporation, maybe just type those words in Google, you'll find your website. But what is your website?
You bet. It's www.jeffcoedc.org. That's jeffcoedc.org.
Kristi, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Peter.
Simple enough. Peter Moore, Chairman and CEO of Vital for Colorado. Kristi Pollard, thank you for being a part of our show. Jefferson County EDC. You can find this show on www.cobrt.com and visit vitalforcolorado.com as well. Thank you and have a great day.